Hello, welcome to our free digital marketing workshop. In these sessions, I'm hoping to give you a good foundation of what it's like to start creating your own digital media. We're not going to cover everything. In fact, I could be here for days and still only scratch the surface in terms of everything that you could follow. For example, if we just look at social media marketing, what platform do we choose? But thankfully, there are threads that tie in multiple disciplines and multiple skills that we can pick up that are translatable from one platform to the next. This is certainly not a how to get 1 million subscribers very quickly. Instead, this is about building layers of skills so you can make an informed decision. Either you want to do this for yourself, for your business, and carry it out, or alternatively, you can look to hire someone because you've had a taster for it and it's not for you. Both options are absolutely fine. If you decide that you want to tackle the huge behemoth that is all forms of digital marketing, from managing your website, sending out email campaigns, right the way through to working with Canva or other graphic design tools to create social media marketing materials, then this, again, will be a good place to start. And we have two communities over on Skool with a K. I'll leave some information for you where you can either go down the DIY route for $15 a month, access myself and my team via leaving us messages and we'll get back to you. Also give us ideas of what content to create in future. Plus you'll find this workshop, plus all of our other core courses available within that monthly subscription fee. We've also got a coaching plan, which is $97 a month. And through that, you get access to me in weekly live video calls via Zoom, where we can tackle your problems and you'll be guaranteed a minimum of 10 minutes dedicated time for every meeting that we deliver. But this workshop's not about that. There's information provided if you want to go down that route. But let's get back to the topic in hand. My name's Elwyn Davies. I've been in digital marketing before I actually knew the term digital marketing. I built my very first website way back in 1996. It wasn't very good. When I graduated from a product design degree in 2004, I launched my first agency with a mate from my course within weeks of leaving that third year of university. I then sold my stake in that business to move back to my roots in Mid Wales. And from there, I think I've found my calling, which is taking my experiences of running a fast growth agency and dealing with multinational clients and repackage this in a way that resonates with small business owners, freelance designers, and those looking to be agile and make a splash. This digital marketing workshop, along with our other free web design workshop, is the fruits of that labor. It's the combination of all of the tips and ideas, or at least the key ones that I can pass on to you. I hope you enjoy. The breakdown is as follows. I was lucky to be able to record a live session that I delivered in a local workshop. It's a live warts and all recording, so minimal editing, but you get a feel for my teaching style and the type of information that you can come up with. Plus also we were able to get it mic'd properly so you can hear it clearly. And I've also added the slide deck as well so the information comes across clearly. That session will give you an understanding of the why and the when, which is really important. And the brand underpins the posts that we put out on social media, the content that we put on our website. It all needs to tie in and be linked by the same threads. I then have another workshop on our principles of design. These are a more colourful way of looking at what is quite a dry subject, but these are our building blocks on which we can create professional looking design. Then finally, we're going to do a demo workshop working on an example. Actually, it's the same project that I did from my web design workshop, which is available for free. And in this project, we're going to reverse engineer it. We've got a website homepage. We're going to take the colours. We're going to take the fonts, and we're going to bring them into Canva, create a very quick logo. And it certainly won't be the standard of logos that we would create for our projects, but it will give us an identity that we can start from. And from there, I want to create a handful of social media posts using Canva and just showing how, once we've got the toolkit set up, everything else becomes that much easier. A lot of what I'll be covering will be available on the free Canva version. However, to get the most value for what you do, I would strongly recommend considering getting the pro version of Canva, which is roughly $120, $130 a year per user. I'm a huge fan of Canva in its accessibility, how easy it is to pick up and play. It really is the Lego for graphic design. I also love digital media marketing. It takes a bit out of you keeping up to date, but that's partly the reason why I love it so much. Anyway, I think we got enough of an introduction there. Let's jump into our initial pop-up lecture. The great thing is about when you work in an agency environment, you get to work with all different shapes and sizes of businesses and organizations. And I've worked with startups, I've worked with sole traders, startups, sole traders, nonprofits on a small scale, local scale, right the way through to multinationals, Sony, Hyundai, national charities and governments. It all sounds very fancy, but ultimately the work that we do is very consistent across the board. So when I was thinking about what to cover today and to run a Canva workshop, it's like a strand or a piece of string. You keep stretching it, it keeps getting bigger and bigger. With my experience, and I've been in the industry for 20 years, and what we do at Pixelhaze is we try to bridge the gap between what an agency can provide, but actually to be able to deliver it at a price point that small businesses and local organizations can stomach. Canva's brilliant. I absolutely love it. However, it frustrates me when I see so many people misuse it. Should we teach design principles? so people can become competent at creating professional layouts in tools like Canva, but without needing to be professional designers. To create something that looks thoroughly professional, you don't need to go on a 3-year course or degree. Of course, to create the best work and come up with the best ideas for the campaigns, it certainly helps. And I always advocate for the students I work with in high schools and undergraduates in university to continue that process. But for the rest of us, we are looking to create something that looks a little bit better, something that just stands out a little bit in the right way. And what I wanted to do today is to take the first section of this workshop to talk about the why. Then we'll still have the bulk of the workshop to work on the how. If you're wondering which direction this is going, we are going to circle back to the how do I create a graphic in Canva? How do I create a business card? How do I create a poster or a social media quote, etc. In there, we will be covering that afterwards. But first, I want to tap into why we do it in the first place and what the main aims are. Before I start on, feel free just to shout out what you want out of this workshop today. What would be the ideal scenario in terms of going from today that you could do that you can't do now? Attractive posters, fantastic. Yep. So we've got attractive posters. Any other? Move away from the templates. Thank you. Brochures, yep. Basically, the way we would tackle a brochure, the structure is slightly different, but if we can design a poster, we can design a brochure. So the core principles of design, which we cover, which are very dry. So actually, when we went into the primary school Kate was working at, we recreated principles of design for primary school children. And then we realized it actually works with the undergraduates at the university when I was guest lecturing with graphic design students. We're going to be covering that a little bit today as well. Things like making sure we've got really good use and consistent use of white space, which is something that I see and it drives me nuts. Yes. Yeah, really good point, especially when working with nonprofits and cause-based enterprises. We are often looking at a wide trajectory for our audience. And this goes back to my product design days where we were working in ergonomics. What we try to do with all of our designs is to create something that looks almost perfect for 90% of our audience, but is still passable for the final 10%. It's a bigger nut to crack when we're talking about web design, which is more of my background, because we're talking to so many different devices, partial sighted blind users, using braille readers, all of that comes into account. And thankfully, a lot of the software we use now has got that underpinned within it. For example, a lot of the best templates on Canva that you can use as a starting point and adjust to what you need will have really good contrast, really good spatial awareness. But accessibility comes back into principles of design. If you can get the fundamentals right, it'll have you thinking about, okay, contrast versus background. We can specialize then by doing a bit more reading up. There's loads of information out there from far better resources than me in terms of creating content for readers with dyslexia. And we'll find regularly we can have that trade-off, that balancing act in terms of optimum viewing experience for our brand versus the most accessible solution. And sometimes we just got to balance the two out a little bit. But what's really important is that we're mindful of both aspects as well. We need to create content that sells, even though may not be physically selling something, we have to sell the idea. But at the same time, we need to make sure we can bring everyone along with us. That's why we're taking it back to the beginning. And we're going to cover the rookie guide to digital marketing. And I just realized driving over that it is a Monday and we're starting with philosophy, but I'm going to just jump really quickly. Nietzsche's quote, "Invisible threads are the strongest ties." And I think that's what online communication, digital communication is all about. That carries over to posters. It's what the artwork we create doesn't have to say in words. That's carried across in the message is really important. And that will come all the way back to branding. I've just realized I've quoted myself on a presentation I'm delivering myself. How very hoity-toity of me. In branding, the most impactful connections with our audiences often stem from shared values, emotional resonance, and trust. This in turn builds loyalty that goes beyond superficial marketing. I loved the Mad Men TV series that was on probably 20 years ago about the advertisement men in Madison Avenue during the early 60s. And it covered lots of aspects, with social aspects in it as well. But it was the idea that you'd have a genius coming up with creative pitches constantly. But ultimately, marketing's not really about that. Yes, you have that eureka moment, that one thing where you just think, oh, this will be a really good idea. But most of it is just communication and building trust with your audience. I'm going to use community support, which I have no direct affinity with. I've fundraised for them in the past. But without the trust of the people they help, or without the trust of the people who they have to ask for the funds to be able to help other people, everything else is lost. By taking a social media campaign where you're making political statements potentially, it's going to break down that trust with at least part of the audience. So we have to be always very careful about how we tread. It's great to be creative, but we need to have in the back of our mind, and it ties into the accessibility thing as well. Accessibility is about making sure it's available and accessible and people can follow the content, but also there is an emotional contract as well to make sure that we are not winding people up just for the sake of it. And there are people who have obviously done very well in polarizing people in opinion. We're not guerrilla marketing for nonprofits most of the time. Most of the time it's about just getting our message out there clearly and easy to follow. So less is often more. Today is a huge topic. I could probably create about 20 hours worth of content in terms of everything we're going to cover. Thankfully, I won't. When we're talking about businesses, and I've worked with probably over 4,000 organizations through my career because I tend to work quickly. That's what I love about it, is just learning so many things about so many different organizations and businesses. The ones who have got their culture nailed down and communicated really well are the ones who do best when they jump into Canva and start creating designs. You need to have an underlying culture, core values of what you believe in, what's your purpose here. Then you can move on to the vision. This is the point on the horizon where everyone is running towards. You'll never reach there in your lifetime, but you're going in the right direction. And then we've got on to brand. The brand is the perception and the communication of all of the above. It's not your logo, which we'll cover in a minute. Digital marketing, which covers everything we're going to be doing on Canva, amplifies what you already have. Every organization has a brand. It may not be a very effective one, or it may not be a very clear one, but the brand is the actions you take. If you don't get back to customers within 5 days and they're disgruntled, that becomes part of your brand, whether you want it to or not. It's the perception. Canva is a design tool to create digital marketing material. So we need to understand business culture. Then we can understand the brand. Then we know what digital marketing we need to communicate that brand. And then we can use Canva as a very friendly, helpful tool that allows us to do that. And we cannot truly master Canva without understanding brand and digital marketing, hence why I'm doing this bit. Elon Musk, who rubs lots of people up the wrong way, but he's an interesting character if you take a neutral take on him. He stated that brand is just a perception, and that perception will match reality over time. And I think that's 100% right. You don't control your brand. You can help shape it over time, but you do one thing wrong, that could damage your brand for 10 years. And with charities and nonprofits, that can be even worse. And we don't need to go through the worst examples of where it goes wrong. Well, the vision definitely is the kind of the direction you're taking. I suppose the brand is how other people perceive or where you are on that journey potentially. But anyone's got any questions during the workshop stage or kind of any concerns about how they can work for an organization, like if you're a volunteer, for example, how you can make sure that you are representing the brand of that organization in a true way, I can certainly help with some feedback on that. Elon Musk bought X last year, I think, showing how something like this can be so polarizing. And the perception of the brand will be different depending on who you speak to, because you have target audience and then you have those who are really disgruntled by it. Depending on your perspective, you could look at X, which used to be Twitter, as either the last bastion of free speech or a billionaire's plaything where he's just making a huge mess. Both could be right. We're not going to get political today, but this one usually gets a lot of people hot under the collar. To their target audience, it's marketing genius. To those who are against it, it's like a red rag to a bull. That's low quality design, but deliberately done to communicate the message to make billionaires seem more normal. And that's a challenge. You design a logo, you build a brand, and you're constantly building that brand. It's a never-ending job, like painting the fourth bridge. And I like to think of a brand as the emotional sledgehammer you get to whack someone with. So it's not just how it looks. So Canva obviously plays a big part of this, if that's the route you're doing to create your design work, and consistency across how everything looks will yield much better results than when you have things that are all over the place. When you go through an airport duty-free and you can smell the pumped-in perfumes through the conditioner, it turns me off. I really don't like that sickly sweet smell, but I'm not the target audience. It must work. They wouldn't have been using it for so long if that type of marketing hadn't worked. Not all marketing is visual. Smell and taste are two very strong indicators of brand. Two brands here with very different approaches to how they sell and market their products. DFS, they're always on sale. Sale ends, don't panic. The autumn sale will be around the corner. And then when that finishes, you've got the Christmas sale. Some people will never take their top level price seriously because they know that they can always get it on a deal. However, that works for them. And the fact I'm talking about DFS now means that's worked in that respect. Apple, other end of the spectrum. It's very rare that you can buy an Apple product for less than the retail value. And it's very rare that retail value won't require you remortgaging your house. So reassuringly expensive to an extreme is where Apple went, yet their underlying vision of the company and the cultural message, their core values, is actually rebelling against the machine. IBM and Apple was founded on being rebellious nature, but they certainly found out how to price themselves when they got some mileage. I'm a sucker for it, as you can see. Harley-Davidson, a brand that transcends brands, and Apple the same. Harley-Davidson are no longer just a motorcycle manufacturer. They are a cultural icon to a point where people will tattoo their logo on their body, which is crazy. To their target audience, they mean way more than just well-made motorcycles. Canterbury as well, another example. This is actually went viral locally in the Royal Welsh Show. Yeah, the Harlequin shorts. Canterbury, from Christchurch in New Zealand, are a rugby kit manufacturer. I've been into schools running this workshop and I show that and everyone knows it straight away. Gymshark's another brand similar. They all knew it, but then I asked how many knew that they were a rugby kit manufacturer, and less than 50% put their hands up. Most of those were playing rugby and they would have a vested interest. So another example of where your brand can transcend what you do. Everyone have a guess at the tagline? Just do it. Yeah. That's where a tagline's been used so many times that lots of people, not everyone obviously, will know that tagline. I'm going to bring it back closer to home. One of our core values is we never grow up. We like to treat our work very seriously and we're passionate about that. But ultimately, there's a playfulness that's in me that I'd never want to go to a boring 9-to-5 job in my life. I think that would be the worst, most corruptive environment I could ever be at. So hence why I'm here talking about things I love. When we talk about technology, it can seem very distant, very alien for some people. It can seem like a playground for others. So what we try to do is build that Lego bridge between the two. What we do is very colorful, and this comes across in our visual brand, hence why the slides aren't black and white and monochrome. We've gone with playful fonts. Our whole ethos is to demystify technology, to take things that are out of reach for small business owners and just bring them within reach. And you can tell me at the end of today whether I've achieved a little bit of that, hopefully. We actually run two businesses, which legally are the same entity, but brand name-wise, they're split off because we don't want confusion between the two. Pixelhaze Studio side, that's the we do it for you bit. And then the academy side of it is the training side is we'll teach you how to do it or coach you through the process. And there's a sliding scale, and the sliding scale is, yes, I really want to get involved in this. Teach me, coach me, and I'll pick it up and run with it myself. At the other end of the spectrum is, can you just get the bloody thing done for me? I actually use that as a starting point when I speak to clients on a one-to-one basis to see where they fit along that sliding scale. We're going to go into what we're going to be covering more today. I like to call it the digital solar system, where you have your website sitting in the middle. Now, I'm a web designer, so I'm probably biased, but your website sits at the middle of your marketing mix, is what we call everything combined, and it's a digital solar system, as I've coined it. Off that, you've got loads of different content types. I haven't even included merchandise, stickers, all of the extra stuff as well. How you communicate feeds off around the website. I would say the website's your home turf, and so have a look at your organization's website. It's also a goldmine for content that can work in social media or posters or other content. We underestimate just how much volume we need to get out for people to truly find out about our organization. Let's take Facebook as an example. So many people I speak to say, oh, I don't want to post any more than, say, 3 posts a week because I don't want people to get fed up with our content. If you're saying the same thing every time, yeah, I get that. But at the same time, some of the best organizations are posting 8 to 10 times a day. So if they could post 8 times a day, then maybe you could go once, twice, 3 times a day. But it's a case of building it up. We build momentum by creating, for example, a spreadsheet of all content ideas. It doesn't need to be technical. You can have it written down on pen and paper, just something you can go back to. We actually drew it all out on a chalkboard in our studio. And then we go back to that and just saying, we've got some ideas for new content. It could be testimonials and feedback from people who are really happy. Can I put this on Facebook page? They'll probably answer, yeah, no problem, in most cases. If it's more sensitive topic, can I change the name? Then put the quote on there as well. That could be created within 5 minutes on Canva. In fact, you could probably do 10 in one go. And if you want to get really sophisticated with it, you can put them all in a spreadsheet and then feed them into Canva designs from a spreadsheet. And you could have 50 quotes all done and dusted within an hour. We're not going to go through all of this today, but if there's some of you who want to tackle that, we can do that in the workshop as well. It can be scaled up much easier, but we start with understanding what we can put in there and why we're putting it on, and then we can do the how. But what we're trying to do even on social media is we're trying to draw people back to our home turf, which is the website, because we've got no control over the future of Facebook. Goodness knows what direction they're going to go. Is it going to go out of fashion? The changeover in the last 10 to 15 years of it being millennials when they were much younger to now being a peak market for over 50s just shows that this is constantly evolving, constantly changing. If you know that your target personas and demographics for who the target audience are over 50s, Facebook's a great hunting ground for that. But that may change in 5 years' time. So it's a case of that cultural message stays the same, but how we do it can change each time. And there's 2 ways of communicating with people and selling. And as I said, we're not necessarily selling products or services. We could be selling attention. Now there's so much more content. There's so many more websites. There's more websites online than there's ever been. And it's exponential how many they're increasing. There's more social media platforms than there's ever been. But yet the time we spend on devices hasn't increased at anywhere near the same rate. We have to work so much harder now to fight for attention without playing dirty, keeping true to what we're about. But that usually comes from volume. The first thing I'd like you to clear out your head is 3 posts a week is enough. Nowhere near enough. So there's 2 ways of communicating. One is planting the seed, just putting those ideas out there. The other one is answering the call. A website's a really good example for that. And I think I've got an example here, planting the seed, email outreach, cold outreach, or emailing and mail shots to people that you know. Did you know that we offer this service? Or did you know that you can now donate via our website? Social media content's a really good example of that. Video marketing, and with TikTok being the behemoth it is now for certain markets, but that's actually growing in other demographics as well. Even if you dismiss it, it's something I think everyone should consider. And I'm forcing myself at the moment to use TikTok regularly. And I'm getting to like it more because the algorithms get to know the type of content that I like more. So I'm not looking at nonsense. It will be nonsense to some people. But for me, it's like DIY tips and things to do around the house. I'm ultra creative. I don't have time for it, but I like to watch a 1 minute video. From what I know about it, the algorithm, it picks up so much data. The algorithms are getting so smart. And with the inclusion of AI now, it can predict so much. We're not as individual as we think we are. You put the certain type of advert in front of me at the right time, I'm probably going to bite. As much as it annoys me, and I know what's happening behind it when I'm doing it, it's just like the human instinct just kicking into gear. It's terrifying, it's scary, but ultimately, most of us will never get a chance to control any of that. So my viewpoint on is do what we can. And if we can hold the moral high ground in terms of we've done well with it and we've been respectful, then I think that's maybe a start. So then when we go on to answering the call, that's where the website, so you put social media posts out. I would say 2 out of 3 of your social media posts should post to your website. So if you take nothing else away from today, that's one tip that where most people miss out on is they're not driving people to their home territory. And having a good, professional, easy to navigate website is essential. Again, biased, but I wouldn't be in a job if that wasn't seen as high priority. And then like other places like your Google Maps profile, make sure you've got that and make sure that the directions, if you have a brick and mortar presence. And then use some AI chatbots and various tools as well. You don't need to go down that route, but they can be added in as you get more comfortable at the basics. Snap poll, we'll put this out to the room. What are the main barriers to prevent you from achieving your digital marketing goals? We become so comfortable with brands that like I could see a Nike product or an Apple product. There'll be times where I'm not in the mood for that. I'm not shopping, so I just flick past it. But the fact that brand's been repeated there, you just become familiarized with it. It's the same with every organization should have some sort of vehicle signage because it's after you've paid for it to get on the vehicle, it's free brand awareness. I advertise locally. We like to try to be part social enterprise, part business. We need to eat, but at the same time, I'm a strong believer if you look after your community, it looks after you in return. Therefore, we advertise in a local show, for example. We'll put an advert in and it might cost 30 quid to put the advert in. I'm not going to get any business back for that directly. Or if I do, it's a bonus. I'm not expecting it. By supporting, not only is the verbal communication on it as well, but it's just getting our logo out there again and again. And then when someone needs a website, they know of us. And hopefully that's reinforced with a good reputation of us staying true to our brand. I get that one. What we're looking to do is to top and tail our designs with a consistency, but then have the chance to break off if we can. And I'll actually cover this a little bit later as well. Barriers often are time or budget as well. We don't have a marketing budget. So for example, for a lot of businesses to really succeed online and to, for example, using Facebook marketing, this is more businesses, less local organizations, but a lot of their spend could be £5,000 to £10,000 a month. That's a sizable spend and you've got to get results for that. So therefore, I would say for nonprofits, sometimes you haven't exhausted the organic route. Even by spending time yourself and not spending any budget, you're learning the lesson. So if you ever did go into spending budget, you're not going to make huge mistakes that cost you thousands or an organization thousands and thousands of pounds. Become a student of the game. When we talk about social, there's so many different areas and platforms to work on. This iceberg analogy, I've used it for various things in the past, and you've probably all seen a variation of this in terms of below the dotted line is what you don't see and above the dotted line is what you see. When someone goes viral, either they're a 1 in a million chance and they've hit lucky, or no results for 3, 5, 10 years. And then everyone sees that moment where everything clicks and they become viral and think, how did you become successful? And the answer is not overnight. My breakdown of it in terms of the organizations that I've worked with over the years is, first of all, it's the first contact. You need just to try something. Your first content is going to be dreadful from a design perspective, probably. You're going to look back at it in 2 or 3 years' time and think, what am I doing? And I've been running a YouTube channel for 3 years. And I know very much about that point where I went from hating just getting in front of the camera just to trying it one day. It was actually during COVID. And I thought I'll give it a go because I've got more time on my hands because I used to run in-person workshops a lot. So I tried it and the first content was dreadful. The sound quality was awful. So even though technology hasn't moved that much further, I'm still recording on a camera phone, but I know how to edit it now. I know what to do to get decent sound. And this is a £100 wireless microphone. And I take it everywhere with me and I use AI tools then to clean up the sound to make it sound like a podcast. We'll see how that works. Unless I tried that first step of just giving something a go, I wouldn't have got to the stage that I want. And you'll all have different journeys with different lengths of that journey in terms of how far you want to push it. If you're just happy creating a poster 4 times a year, then great. I can show you some of the shortcuts without them being damaging shortcuts to allow you to space it out and to make it look consistent and work with it today. If you want to start with that and then really take it on and start creating viral videos, which won't be viral to start with unless you're very lucky or unlucky, as I'll come on to in a minute, then it's a great starting point. And Canva will be along every step of the way. This is created on Canva. We use Canva every day in our studio. There are certain aspects it can't handle for what we need, but most of the time it's the quickest, most efficient and flexible way that we can design. 100-day rule. Can you do something the same for 100 days? Now, this doesn't have to be 100 days continuously. It could be a day a week for 100 weeks. This has been tested to say that's a really good example of can you stay consistent? It's something I always struggle with. I'm an ideas person and I get bored very quickly, so I have to work really hard on the mundane to make sure that I'm going through the process. Whatever rate you decide to start with, okay, we're going to start off by just posting once a week. Fine. If you weren't posting anything before, that's a great bit of momentum. You can always add a second, a third as you get more comfortable with it. But what's most important is that you do not fail to add that one post a week. And then by the time you've hit 100 weeks on that, a couple of years, you will be so comfortable and consistent in that it just becomes part of the day-to-day role. And then so anyone else coming into the role, they just inherit what you started. Then when you say our vision is to have 10 posts a day, don't start with 10 posts a day, you'll burn yourself out and you'll end up tying yourself up in knots, which is something I'm at risk of doing all the time myself. So then you learn the systems, just saw there's a typo there. Systems and steps, it was entirely planned. There's my mind in a nutshell. You learn the systems, you learn the steps involved, and then you just repeat, and then you create yourself a feedback loop. Look at the analytics on all the social media channels. They're really good and really in-depth. They'll give you everything you need to learn. And if you've ever done anything on YouTube, like I have, it's absolutely brutal. Very rare that someone will come on and just say, I hate you. I get that back in the form of someone's watched the first 3 seconds and then jumped away from my video. And it's a talking headshot video, so they see my mug on there and then switch away after 3 seconds. Ouch. As you get desensitized to it, you're more confident in your delivery, and therefore people will stay for longer and longer. And then when you've done all of those, that's where you go through the threshold of something going viral. Unless you get a one-hit wonder. I do not like working with companies who have done really well once and then they plateaued or dropped off. By creating a TikTok video that went viral and had 50 million views, and then someone tries to repeat it and it's just nothing. And it happens quite common. Maybe 1 in 10 would be what you call a one-hit wonder, because they haven't done the learning journey, they haven't done the groundwork, or don't have the skills to be able to analyze what worked in that video. So all they're doing is just stumbling around and they just hit one potluck. But by understanding your brand, understanding your audience, getting the feedback loop going so you can start seeing what people come back with, that's where we can learn. A couple of minutes now on video marketing, and we're going to jump onto the workshop side really quickly. Anyone surprised by that statistic? 82% of all internet traffic in 2024 is video content. So with 82% of all traffic coming from videos, and your organization you're working with isn't creating videos, my question is, why not? It's rocketing and showing no signs of slowing down either. And also one thing to think of, and this is really impactful for nonprofits, is by helping people for free, you can cross-sell, upsell, and even monetize YouTube directly. I've got one channel that's monetized. It's not making me a huge amount of money at the moment because I've only really started learning in the last 12 months about how to do it properly. The rest of the time was just experimental. And I've got another YouTube channel that's going to be monetized within the next 30 days based on the way it's going. And that one will probably earn me near £1,000 a month, whilst the current one is less than £100 a month. It's not life-changing, but that's still a starting point where I'm looking to grow that. But the way most YouTubers make money isn't via monetization from YouTube. It's usually from promoting a product or service off the back of it. People buy from people in many cases. And so when someone comes back to your videos 3, 4, 5 times, lots of them can't help but reach out to you and just say, can I book you for a one-to-one session? Are you building a course on this topic? And say, okay, I built this course. I'm going to be selling it for this amount. What do you think? And then you can use your audience to get that feedback loop going again. It's very much the keyword at the moment is feedback loop. Less from guesswork, which is traditional advertisement. All used to be, no matter how big the agency was, it's all guesswork based on your prior experiences. Now we can just get the data back. We can ask our audience, okay, what do you like? What don't you like? What do you want to see more of? And on the flip side, yes, you've got the kind of Henry Ford saying, if I asked my customers what they want, they'd ask for a faster horse. In many cases, you can show them sample things. You can invite your audience into focus groups, workshops, or communities that you can bring them into to get that feedback. And it's something I'm doing a lot of at the moment. Create an iconic look, something that sets it apart, but give yourself some breathing space. And that's the point mentioned earlier about everything looking corporate and looking the same across the board. You can give yourself breathing space. If you have to get sign off from someone further up the chain to do any of this, say you're creating a campaign that's based on the brand. So the brand is the company logo, organization logo, but you're creating a targeted campaign at a certain target audience and then just put some notes down in terms of who this video, for example, is speaking to, what the aim of it is going to be to do, and then the amount of content you can create around that as well. Develop and refine your tone of voice. So the tone of voice is how the brand's perceived. And eat, sleep, preach it and repeat it. So it's like a mantra in terms of this is how we do it, this is how we speak, this is what we do. We've created the framework, and now let's come up with some creative ideas within that. In this part, I'm going to take you through the Pixelhaze principles of design. As mentioned earlier in this workshop, we find principles of design quite dry. In fact, there are many graduates from university who have forgotten them, as in the names of each of the principles, but they don't necessarily forget the underlying message. The challenge we got here is we don't have a 3-year degree to imprint these ideals into every person who uses Canva. So we need to find a way of filling up much of that gap as quickly as we can. Playful characters can really help with that. Off the back of this, you will not be a professional designer, but you will be what I tend to call art workers. An art worker is someone who's competent at mimicking professional design by understanding principles, understanding branding and structures, templates or grids, to be able to mimic those professional designs. So think of the professional designer who would come up with a campaign, and then within that campaign there may be several social media posts. It can get very expensive to bring in a professional designer to create every piece of artwork for your small or micro business. So therefore, we can mimic as much of that as possible, and Canva is the perfect vehicle for that. These principles will arm you with a simple, clear set of rules that you should follow. I would recommend just jotting them down, having them in a list. In fact, I'll probably create an infographic at some point in the near future so that you can refer to these when you're going through your designs. So let's start off with principle number 1. It's not actually a design principle, but it's something that I always like to instill into the planning process. And that is measure twice, cut once. It's a very old idiom from the trade. So if you just take a tape measure and measure a piece of 2x4, it's good just to measure it a second time, because a mistake in the measuring is fine if we go through that process twice. Whilst if we made the mistake in the measuring process and then cut straight away, and then we end up with a headache and wastage. We don't want that. And in design, measure twice, cut once simply means sketching out your idea. Put everything into the page first and then start structuring. One of the consistent aspects where designers struggle in particular is they will laser focus on one small detail where the rest of the design hasn't even been started. What if you end up moving away from that idea? You've wasted so much time. I like to build designs layer upon layer. You scaffold it out, you have the main elements in place, you then move them around, adjust them, and get them to play nice together. You could use a chalkboard, like I got behind me here. You could use whiteboards, flip charts, pen and paper, and even Canva itself to just put the main components in, order them, and then take your design from there. It's much easier than just focusing on one small element at a time, believe me. Next up, we have Spaceman. This is our take on white space. And white space in design is negative space. So it's not necessarily white, which doesn't help us remembering this. But when we have white space in design, and if I just take this t-shirt here, simple design, we've got the spacing around the logo, meaning that it's not huge on the t-shirt and going from edge to edge where we can't read it correctly. That's a very simple example. But the errors that new designers will make sometimes is they won't have consistency or flow to the way that white space is used. In websites, rookies will tend to bring the logo right out to the edges of the section it's in or make it huge. And actually, something that's smaller with more white space around it can bring just as much focus as something that's blown up to be a large size. It's horses for courses, but we need to have good breathing space around our elements. So when we look at Spaceman, and I've created a graphic here that shows this, in fact, this instills all of our principles of design in one graphic. Our Spaceman's got the space to breathe. The design can allow you to focus on one element at a time, and we'll come on to hierarchy in just a moment, showing why that's so important. If you're new to this, you're probably over-designing, and what we're trying to do is strip our designs back to the bare minimum, and then when we're adding elements, design features in place, we need to justify them with a reason for each. But in short, Spaceman, give your design space, and let our Spaceman breathe. And just as a bit of a side detour here as well, we've got two types of white space. We've got macro white space. Think of the big spaces around our logos, emblems, or our Spaceman. And then we've got the micro white space. This would be what we call kerning, or the spacing between each letter of a word. And if you ever look at it closely, you'll see that those spaces between each letter in words will never be the same, because they would look really weird if you were to have the same gaps between each character in a word. And most of the time, we don't need to worry about kerning when we're using software like Canva, simply because this would have been laid out via the designer when creating it. So kerning is different to standardized spacing. It's adjusted depending on the shape of the letter. But the micro white space is the gaps between letters, for example, or two elements in close proximity. The macro white space would be the space around those elements or around that text. Anyway, back onto the next point. Yin and Yang. So these are our two aliens showing contrast. When we look at the first example of Yin, you can see that his boots are the navy color, very similar to the backdrop. This was done on purpose, and it's not a design mistake, but just to show that when we don't have enough contrast, we run into problems. Yet the rest of our alien, apart from those navy garments, contrast beautifully to the backdrop. We've got the portal in around as well, which lifts it off so it gives us nice color and contrast in a design. Contrast is also really important for accessibility. If we just take accessibility from the very basic level, we want high contrast wherever possible. And if you're new to this, go for a really high contrast to be on the safe side. As you become a more experienced designer, you start to get an eye for it and everything just flows and becomes that much easier. You can identify contrast issues much quicker. But yin and yang, make sure we've got a balance through nice broad contrast between the colors and hues of our design. Next up, we brought up our Phantom of the Opera, and we can see him in center stage with a spotlight on him. And aptly, this principle, according to Pixelhaze, is called spotlight. There can only be one star of your show. The rest is the supporting cast. In principles of design, this is hierarchy, and what we're looking to do is focus on one main element. So that's the star of a show. In this case, we've got our Phantom himself with a spotlight literally on him. Then we've got the supporting cast, which would be the text and the accent underline that ties it back into our Pixelhaze branding, that keeps the consistent theme going through the slides. But at the same time, we are hopefully drawn into our character first. The rest of the information is to add context and to support that main image that draws us in. Another rookie mistake that designers make when they just start out is they feel that they have to put more in so that they're showing their true value. What we're doing is we're stripping everything back and then shining a spotlight on the key area of our design. If you memorize this one, your designs will instantly look better. And now we move on to consistency is key. If we are doing everything up to this point correctly, and the last slide was actually a really good example of consistency where we had the character changing, the spotlight on him changing slightly, even though the colors were different, the font, the underline effect, and the tagline all remain consistent along with the background color for the design, also the size and spacing of each of our elements in the design. If we start moving the text around with no reason, then it becomes a more frustrating experience for the viewer. We're subverting their expectations, and that's not always a good thing. We don't want to make our viewers work to understand our content unless there's a clear reason for it. For example, a page from a Where's Wally book, we want our viewer to work for it. Same with a magic eye diagram or a picture puzzle. However, in most cases, we want to articulate that information as clearly and as simply, as quickly as possible. We don't want to be putting barriers, obstacles in the way for someone to view our content. And consistency is one of the best ways of carrying that flow through. And some people have been asking me, if they go too consistent, will that make their content bland? And the way around this is to run campaigns on themes that tie into an overall consistent theme. Our slides can look quite different, but they will always tie back to the same fonts each time. The fonts, the colors, even though we've got flexibility to move away from the core structures as and when we want, they generally remain consistent. So when someone sees a Pixelhaze slide from our slide deck, there's a very good chance that they're going to remember that, and I hope they find that reassuring. On to our penultimate slide, we've got rhythm and beat. If we've done everything right up until this point, this should flow nicely. We're looking for that rhythm, hitting that note every single time from start to finish of each of our designs. Each campaign can be different, but the overall feel should be largely the same. And this is where it's really important to have a clear brand voice, because that is what dictates what our rhythm and beat is going to be. We're talking flow, and we work best when we're in a flow state. Likewise, our design works best when it's also in a flow state. So there's absolutely no harm in you picking a template that works really well and fits with the brand of the organization you are designing for, then duplicating that several times until we get more confident and push the boat out. It's better to cover all of the basics consistently so we can build that flow than it is to come up with new creative ideas in every single campaign. If you're a professional designer, that should be professional standard design regardless of the project. Then earn your corn as a designer to come up with new campaign ideas to stretch our brand within the confines of the brand guidelines. But when you're starting out, don't worry if your designs all look consistent. If they look consistently good, that will put you off to a really good start. And our final principle, again, is not really a principle of design, but I've lumped it in with it because I feel it's so important. No matter how good we get our content to look, it's that same content that's king. We're on to content is king. You can have a Shakespearean quote, even by breaking all of the rules in our design, will still have meaning and it will still have impact. But if we can create designs that look professional and adhere to our principles of design, and then combine it with a Shakespearean quote, then we're really cooking. We can only polish the content so much in the design process. It's what we're working with as a starting point is what's most important. Similar to edit photos in Photoshop, if you've taken a really poor photo, then that editing process is all the more difficult, even if you're using some of the latest AI tools in photo editing. Spend your time thinking about the content and how to perfectly get that message across to your audience, and then add all of the polish that we can add via adhering to principles of design to finish it off. Then, once we've got those combined, we can build confidence in the content we create, and then we can really start pushing things forward. And in the next part of this workshop, I'll be showing you a demo of how I can create logos, how I can create social media graphics relatively quickly, but also giving you a tour of the basics that we can do in Canva. I reiterate once more, Canva is a perfect vehicle to incorporate principles of design, create simple artwork that's unlikely to overpower a new designer to the field, or someone who's just a part-time designer for 1 or 2 hours a week. And finally, this slide, which we had a quick look at earlier, combines all of our principles of design. The content is king. We needed the idea of the spaceman to be able to create this poster. Then when we look at the measure twice, cut once, we have to plan it. Otherwise, it could end up really messy. So this was sketched out very quickly. I think it might have even been as simple as a stickman to get the idea across. And then it was created in Adobe Illustrator, in this case by our in-house illustrator, Ken Rees. We then needed to make sure that our spaceman could breathe, and that was quite easy in this one because the poster is all about that concept. But not only is it breathing space around him, we've toned down the items in the background, and we've got that asteroid ring going around the outside of the spaceman. That generates a very clear spotlight. There's only 1 star of this show. Even though there's so much going on around the outside, we are drawn into our spaceman in the middle. Then we look at yin and yang, our contrast. We can see our spaceman is heavily contrasted to the dark navy backdrop, and the gradients in the backdrop as well help to give it a bit of depth, but also keep the focus on our astronaut. We've got consistency in terms of the art style between this and other pieces of work, but also in the styling of the elements that make up this poster. We don't have 2 or 3 different art styles for our spaceman, then one of the rockets, then the asteroids in the backdrop. Then finally, rhythm and beat. Our brand's very strong in this design, and that's really important to us. So when someone identifies this illustration, there is a tie-in, even though structurally it's very different to the rest of the slides. We can identify this as a very clear Pixelhaze concept. There may be some professional designers who don't agree with these principles, but ultimately they work. They're not all of the principles of design. I don't want to get bogged down with too much detail, but one thing we found is this is a really good catalyst for someone to start creating professional designs. It's worked for the designers I've trained in recent years. It's worked for students all the way down to primary school, and I hope it works for you. Let me know how you get on, and I'll see you in the next part. Okay, welcome to the Canva part of this workshop, and we're going to take the result of a previous workshop where I created our website homepage design in Squarespace. We're going to take things like the font, the colors, and other aspects from this site and bring it into a logo in Canva, but also we'll create some social media graphics as well. I'll keep it really simple, just go for square designs, I think, and we can potentially look at bringing in some quotes as well. So this content isn't exactly suitable for the site. It was about creating an overarching structure and clarity, so that's why some of this content is applicable, some of it hasn't been updated. I am actually going to be converting this into a live website for our own holiday lets in Mid Wales. I often find that's the best place to start, but the one thing I haven't done yet is to create a logo for it. I'm going to try it in Canva, but we're probably going to spend a few extra hours in the studio using Adobe Illustrator to create a professional logo. But if you're really struggling, Canva can be a great starting point for logo designs. Also, you can create something, pass it on to a professional designer if you want someone else just to give it that finishing touch. Branding is certainly its own thing, and we don't have time to even scratch the surface on everything that needs to go into a logo today. But before we go and select a logo as our style here, I just want to give you a quick tour of this page. We can see we've got our login profile in the top right-hand corner. We've got a shortcut to create a new design. There's a lot of extra features here in the menu system, but I tend to stay clear of those unless I'm looking for something in particular. On the left-hand panel here, we'll see our team profile. Again, it really depends on whether you're one of a large team using Canva or whether you're working individually. And we've got projects folder, which is like your folder system on your computer, My Documents. It's very similar there, where we can see all of the project work you've done. You might have better folder organization system than me and my team have. We're not the best at that. It's something we're always working on. You've got templates here where you can search for starting templates, and you've got a load of preset options to choose from. I would say that the more familiar you become with Canva, the less you're going to rely on templates, but there's absolutely nothing wrong with using them to give you an idea of professional structures to start with. This one, for example, here, we could change the fonts, we could change the colors to make it really tie in with our own brand, but that structure of that infographic can give you a professional layout. Even just looking at a small thumbnail here, we can see that the white space, the equal spacing around that graphic and around each element is done professionally. It looks really polished, and that's what we're aiming to achieve. We're not all going to be professional designers. It takes years to get to a level where you can consider yourself as a seasoned designer, able to create new campaigns on the ground up and get it right first time. But the good news is most of the time we don't need to worry about that. We are trying to mimic what professional design is, and that Canva, I believe, is the best tool in the world for that. And we've got loads of designs and templates option here, which we can choose from. And I'm going to pick one of these logos just as a starting point to get the ball rolling in a moment. If we look down the left-hand side here, if we go back to home, we can go into the brand folder. We can see this little crown icon. That means it's premium only, Canva Pro. If I just go back a step, we can see that little crown icon there. Anytime you see that, that's only available for Canva Pro users who are paying the annual subscription. And we can see the brands that we've got set up in here. So if we look at the Pixelhaze brand kit, we've got all of our logos in all the different colors. We've got a color swatches there with our primary color palette. Within this palette, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4 core colors. These ones here. And then these are extra action colors that we may use in the slide deck. Likewise, we've got custom upload of fonts or selected fonts from Canva, meaning that we can have our entire brand toolkit in place. I haven't played around with the brand voice. We can train Canva to sound like us, and then it can use AI to write the content for us. This is something that I'd recommend having a play with when you get more familiar with Canva, because at the moment I'm using ChatGPT, another solution where I can go in and write the content. We've got icons, graphics, and photos, which again, I need to have the time to upload our brand toolkit. So that's our brand kit. We can see the breakdown here, which will fast track you to the various sections of that area. And it's pretty intuitive to add new assets. One thing to note is these logos have all been created in PNG format. This means that they are transparent. We don't see any dark backgrounds on the white logo versions. We've got long form versions of the logo. We've also got hook graphics as well, which is a shorthand version. For example, our Pixelhaze logo has the long format and it's got the shorthand format as well. I'm not going to be doing this for today's logo, but when we finish off the final version of the logo, I probably will create a brand kit. And finally, I'm going to show you apps. And here we've got all of the different tools that are available that you can plug into Canva Pro. Things from background removers for images, converting an image to a frame, being able to record your own voice, to be able to add it to video content, and even auto post to platforms like LinkedIn, Twitter. I've certainly not tapped into the full potential of Canva, and I'm on here at least 3 or 4 days a week creating designs. But there's so much more you can do to increase the productivity and what you can do with it. This video is not about that. We are going to go for the very basics. So that's the interface. We've got a search here where we can search for our existing content, and it will just tag it and we can search through that. Or we can search for Canva starter templates. Alternatively, as we looked at before, we can go via this templates tab on the left hand side here and have a good look through everything to see what we like. We can see the logo options here. I'm going to start from scratch anyway, but I'm just going to have a look at some of the options. Now let's go for this one here. It's not at all what we want. Okay, so that's created a square logo, and that's a good place to start. But what we might find is for a website, we want them more elongated like this. So sometimes we need to create 2 versions of a logo, one square one and one elongated one, or we have a deeper masthead and just have the square one. I'm going to create an elongated version of the logo. So now I need to think of the elements. A lot of really old fir trees behind the holiday lets, they've got a really unique shape, as in they've kind of lost their shape a little bit as well. So I'm just seeing if I can find something that could do the job really nicely for that. The tops are kind of tilting over, maybe an old tree. But this just gives you an idea of how many styles that we've got to work from. So I think instead I'm going to go for tree rings, maybe go for something like this, and then we're going to cut into it. So I'm going to double click on it, and now we can start manipulating this image we've uploaded. So just by double click on it, we switch between image resizing and crop mode. And we can see we can choose to crop that image where we want to. I'm just going to get rid of all of this. We don't need it. And now I can move this around by clicking on it once. We can see we've got the circles. If I double click on it, it goes from the circles to those brackets, and that goes between resize and crop mode. We can now grab any corner and resize that graphic as we want. We can realign it, and I really like the smart guide since they've introduced it in Canva. We know that we've got our graphic perfectly centered. Of course, we don't want it perfectly centered. We're going to have it offset, but we want it to the middle of the design. But if I look through this Elements tab, let's have a look at what else we've got available. We've got graphics, photos, videos, frames. So a frame is where we can put a photo. So I'll just show as a quick example here. We create a frame or use a frame and put a photo into the frame. And that's a way of keeping everything within your brand. If we go for all frames, I'm just going to get rid of the tree search and just do a search for frames. We can just create something like a circle frame, and that can work really well. And we can put a photo in, say that one. And now we can move that around, resize it, and adjust it to what we want. Frames are another nice way of showcasing our content slightly differently. And if we use a logo that's quite rounded and everything else that we do is quite rounded, those circular frames can be really good. I used copy and paste the Control-C and Control-V on a PC or Command-C and Command-V on a Mac just to resize those, and then we can do some really interesting effects with multiple images. I'll get rid of that previous frame, and to put a new one in place, all I need to do is click, hold, and drag the image over top of that frame, and it's in position. But say we wanted to showcase a different part of the photo. I can double-click on it, and this time I can move the image within the frame. And so a landscape image, we can move it left and right most of the time, and the portrait image, we can move it up and down. So there we go. We've moved that image within the frame. We've got two there, and that allows us to create some unique effects. We've also got the option to put shapes in. So I could put a circular shape, and say we wanted to separate these two photos, I could move that here. We can see that cross, meaning that it's perfectly centered above the image behind. And now I can right click, and we've got layer, and I can send this to the back. It will keep it in front of the background color, which we can set via this option here. But it will move it behind both of these objects. Now, as we can see, we didn't really want to do that because we want it overlapping this photo behind. So again, with that layer selected, I can right click and then bring forward one. And now we can see that that image has got a frame around it by using shapes. We could also do the same with this image behind. And this time we do most certainly want to put that layer to the back. And it's just a case of, might have to do it by eye. By using two different images and just moving those shapes around, we can then select over all of them by clicking and dragging onto them. And then we can move them into the position that we want. So that's images. I'm just going to delete that. That was a demo to show you how to do it. We're going to go back to our logo, and we're going to move on to the next tab, text. From here, I've got all different text styles to choose from. So I'm going to select a heading, and I'm going to just scale up that text to what I want. So you could keep a logo really simple and go for this option, and then maybe even just drop it in there. The best thing to do is to put your name in place. That's the name of the farm, Caer Mynach. It's Welsh, translated from monk's fort. Caer meaning fort in Welsh, Mynach monk or monks. One of the challenging things we've got for a Square logo is that's quite a long name. So what we could do is select this text and tweak the spacing. So let's put it, say, -20 to make that more compact. Now by cutting off the wood grain by there, we've created a double meaning. It's both the sun, and there's a certain irony here because the amount of rain we get. But no, when we get a nice day, it is quite sunny. So we'll leave that in. And what I'm going to do is search for a hand-drawn line. I'm just going to try something as it's come to me now. And I want a line in there that's not perfect. But I want it quite straight, so it hides, obviously, the join there with the backdrop. So that's not terrible, but it's still probably not exactly what I want. It's almost like that's been hand-drawn into the logo. That could work, but I'd probably find something that's a bit better. I can then select it once, and you can see there's a rotation or a move option. So if you can't actually select in the shape, very easy to move it. We've got these circles here, and you can click and drag on them. I can then rotate it slightly, and then use the bounding box to reduce the size. Because I want the width of that line to be roughly the same as the wood grain. There we go. I've created a unique image here by two separate images, and I'm just going to copy and paste that one and just show you the original once more. So when people say that Canva is quite stifling because it doesn't allow you to hand draw like an Illustrator, it's not as good for that. There's a certain point there, but I think sometimes if you've got a good creative imagination, you can create certain things from scratch that work well anyway. This is our Pixelhaze font, so we're going to move away from this now, and I'm going to head back to the website, even though the workshop's not about this, and I'm just going to go and just see what font we use for the headings to see if that's available in Canva. It may not be. Let's have a look here. Libra Baskerville. Aha, we're in luck. So that font is available here. If we click on the little drop down arrow next to it, we can see it's available in both regular and bold. And I think we're going to go with bold, just so that's nice and punchy on there. And this will lend itself to an elongated logo really nicely anyway. We're going to find out what the paragraph and see if this font, Almaro, is available in Canva. So we go down to text again. Let's add a subheading. Or is it Almarai? Oh yes, it is. Don't have my glasses on. We're lucky that we've got both the title and the subtitle font available in Canva. If you've had a logo designer create your brand for you, or your logo for you, then you can just ask them for the logo. But I'm going to get this to fit nice and snug underneath the N to the H. Probably a little bit of spacing here now to get it consistent. So I can use the arrow cursors to move things down, or if I hold shift, it will nudge it that much more. And that's a little shortcut that's really handy. I would recommend getting hold of all the Canva shortcuts. If you do a quick Google search, you'll find a load of them online. I am updating my course on Canva this autumn, and part of that will be to create a shortcuts tutorial, which will get you in the process of using all the keyboard shortcuts. If you're going to be using it regularly, it will save you an awful lot of time. Another thing that could save you time is I've highlighted both of these options for this emblem for the logo, and I'm going to click on group, and that brings them both together and easy to work with. And now I can click over and drag over the text layers to bring them back up. So we've got some nice consistent spacing. Case of playing around till it looks pleasant on the eye. Not my best logo, but I don't hate it. That's a good start. I'm going to reduce the gaps between the letters. May mean just a little bit of fine tuning. I want to put focus on the name first, but I also want that to be big enough so if the logo is smaller, you can see it easily enough. It's just getting the balance right between everything. The way that line just squiggles down in towards the Y, I think works quite nicely, and that becomes the divider then for the tagline below. Okay, I'm happy with that. If I was to put that into the website just as that, it would take up a huge space, or it would be absolutely teeny tiny. So what I would normally do at this stage is go to the resize option here, choose a new custom size, and unfortunately you can't just grab handles in on the canvas and make it smaller like you can in Adobe Illustrator. So we have to guess. So at the moment it's 500 by 500. So we can see it's maybe half, just over half. So let's go with 260 height. And then once we've ticked that, we can click continue. And we've got two options. We can either resize this direct design, which we don't want to do, or we can go to copy and resize, which makes a copy of that file and resize it at the same time. I believe that feature is for Canva Pro. And then we can, when we click on open it, it'll open it in a new tab here at the top, meaning that we keep that original square version of the logo. Depending on the application and what we want to use it for, that's quite handy. In this case, I'm going to group this version and just bring it out right the way to the end, and we'll see how close we got it. Okay, not too bad, and I think I'm going to go with that. And what we would do now is share and export this logo, download it, and what we'd do is download it to a PNG. And we can see here that this is a Pro version. So you've got a little crown icon there. But what we want to do is go for the transparent option, meaning that it won't have a white bounding box. It won't be on a white block. And I know that people I've worked with, they have issues when they're bringing in graphics that are on kind of white blocks like that. That can be a problem. So that's something that you can export it, and then you've got a PNG, which is a good high quality version of your logo, unless you scale it up larger. At the moment, this logo is entirely vector based. A vector uses mathematical formulas to resize the image, so it means that you should never lose quality, and all fonts are built like this. No matter how big that graphic gets, it won't look pixelated, it'll look nice and crisp. If you're finding that you want to download a higher quality version of this in PNG, we can rescale that right up to 1500 pixels by 813, which will work for larger files. If we want to go really large, we go for PDF print, which will keep that in vector format for printing. So that's the one you would send to someone for digital signage or to put your logo on the side of your vehicle. Again, a lot to cover in this tutorial, but hopefully some of these are making sense. The idea of this is largely to give you a good foundation of which you can go and explore from, but also a bit of an idea in terms of what you can do with this design. Okay, so I'm going to leave this logo at this stage and we're going to jump back to this version and we're going to add a new page, and now this is going to be transformed from logo into social media graphics. So I'm going to go up to the design tab on the left and I'm going to search, instead of logo templates, we can see these tabs here. So we're going to look for example, a Facebook post. Eventually you want to move away from templates if you can and build your own toolkit of themes that you can use for consistency with your designs. Consistency is great. It gives your brand that extra development. What I'm looking for now is a quote Facebook post. And let's just go for something really simple, like this one here. We can see that this template is broken down with different shapes, all available via the Elements tab here. And if we just search for blob, I'm sure we'd find them easily enough. We've got a square shape in front. And what I'm going to do is now change this font to what we've already used. So Libre Baskerville is the font we use for this. And we're going to change this font to Almarai. I'm going to go with that. So I could put the name of the customer in, but this is going to be a quote. This could be a nice way of putting a social media post on. Once we created one template, we could create multiple versions of this with a different photo in behind. That's a bit of a spoiler. I'm going to put a photo behind this block here. But this means that we can create social media graphics so quickly. And then once we've created it once, we can duplicate it multiple times. So let's make sure all of these are nice and aligned to the middle. This now will change to our colors from our site. So if we go back here, we can see all of the colors available to us. So I'm going to change the text color to this here. And I'm going to go exit this editing mode on the Squarespace site just so we can see it a bit clearer. And I've downloaded a Chrome extension, Colorzilla, which is an eyedropper tool. And here we can select the colors and it will copy what we call the hexadecimal value to the clipboard. So now when we go back over to our site, we can select the text color. And instead of selecting one of the pre-existing swatches here, go to this plus icon. And now I can paste in the color I picked up from Colorzilla. As we can see, it's really dark. It's not black. And it's got a hint of blue, like a slate gray in it as well. It may look black, but it's nice just for consistency to make sure that we're getting all of our colors in place. That is black. That's not black. With text like this, you won't really notice a difference that much, but it's something that I like to get right. Let's copy and take an eyedropper to this section now. And we can see the new hexadecimal value. And again, same process. Click on that plus, paste that, and now we can see the text is nice and clear on it, but this gets completely lost. So let's turn that to a white title, and maybe even that's probably not a high enough contrast for accessibility. So it might be a case of just playing around with that or choosing a different color instead of that muted color in the background there. But we're starting to get there now in terms of how this looks. I'm definitely going to make that smaller so we've got a bit more space. We're going to bring our logo into this design, just for brand awareness and brand repetition. So here, I'm actually going to select the text color and we're going to change it to our brand colors. And likewise, these shapes, I might have to select the shapes individually. And now we've added the color in once, we can just match it to that by just clicking on it. I'm going to select all the items in this logo and then group it. But I'm going to keep that there for now because I might have to go and bring it into another page. So I'm going to copy that grouped shape or shapes and bring them in to this design here. And now I'm going to go to Elements once more, and this time I'm just going to find something relatively suitable. I'm not going to upload our own photos, or we need to do more with them. So I'm going to find something that looks similar to the location. And we're going to use this as just a bit of color in behind that shape. The easiest way to do this is to right click on it and click replace background, and that will resize it and fix it over top of the entire background. And now we have a template that can look nice but unique. What we can try now is actually to duplicate this and switch the colors around, because that looks quite nicely with the slate grey. So let's make this white text over top of it. For me, that has more impact. I just need to remember where everything else was in our design. So I could have just gone back into this one and started editing again. Another thing I can do is zoom in, which will make it easier as well to access and find the other part of that shape. So this is decisions time. Which one do we like? Do we like the light? Do we like the dark? But ultimately, it doesn't matter. We can use both of these to get our message across. Now, if we wanted to create another social media graphic, still not sure on the spacing, we can simply duplicate page and then change the quote. That's why it wasn't working. We forgot to change the author. So I can get rid of that version. Just zoom in a little bit so we can see it a bit better. But the next one, now we can change that. If you wanted to put inverted commas either side of that text. One thing I sometimes do is just change the color of those inverted commas. If we wanted to bring in another color, and if you've got another color in your brand that complements these more neutral or monochromatic style tones, then you can do that as well. But once we've created one template that we're really happy with, this is where it becomes much easier. I can just click and drag this image across over top of it. We can put a different quote in, and then we could put one of those every single week out on our social media, and it will keep it fresh because it's a different testimonial. If these are the only posts we're putting up, it'll get old pretty quick. But if we're mixing these up amongst day-to-day thoughts or updates on Facebook, for example, some you would put on with graphics, some you would put on without. But that's how you start to develop your social media strategy. The only way to do this properly is to start playing around, start doing things, and then seeing what your audience wants. Ask them, look at the data, there's loads of analytics information. Just to quickly recap, we've created a simple logo using Canva. We've then resized it using the resize tool and then changed the aspect ratio. We've been through the instructions of how to download it as a transparent PNG by selecting this option here. Also, knowing that that's only available in Canva Pro. We've taken the styles, the font style and the color palette from this design, and we brought it into our current design here, and then been able to create social media graphics that we can really replicate. If we wanted to create posters, it's essentially more of the same. So let's do a very quick change of size for this. I'm going to change it to a poster here. That's A4 size. Click continue. And we're going to copy and resize as well. So we'll keep this version. Let's open that version. It will do its best at getting it right for you. But ultimately, when we're going from social media post to poster, we're probably going to add in more content. For our poster, we could decide now that we can take this inside frame and make it more elongated. We can get more information in there. Take this title text. We know it's the right font, so we can change the positioning of it from centrally aligned to left aligned. We can resize it and move it further up. We can then bring our logo wherever we want really within that, and we can then start putting our content in place. So I'm just going to put some placeholder text in here. Not going to make any sense. This would be more document content. It's definitely not strong enough for a poster. There's just too much information in here. But this hopefully gives you an idea that when we've conquered one thing in Canva, it becomes much easier to go and move it onto something else. So that could be quite a nice notice that you could get printed and maybe laminated and put in the holiday let for new visitors. So when they come in, we've got a photo of what would be the farm in the background. It's branded and it's got some information in there. And it's just taken us minutes once we created that initial social media post. We've got a theme that carries through, and especially if you go to this brand list on the side here, and if we upload our brand toolkit, it means then that all of our assets are really easy to bring in here. The color palette will already be available. So for example, if I was to select this color here, these are our Pixelhaze primary colors, but in this primary section, you would have your brand colors, meaning that you can just access them straight away. That's why I really love Canva. It's so user-friendly and so quick to use. And there's some tabs down the side here that we're not going to have time to go through all of them. The other one you might want to look for is uploads, because in there you can upload your own photos as opposed to needing to use stock. And if you want to stay to the Canva free version and create posters and social media graphics, and you have all your own photos, then this should again do the job for you. You just may need to reuse your graphics by replicating them like this instead of just relying on your brand toolkit. Hope this has helped you to have a good basic understanding of what Canva is. The next steps, we've got two communities over on Skool. One which is a DIY community where you can dip in and out as much as you want. The onus is generally on you. We'll give you access to our Canva Box of Tricks course, which is going to be roughly $40 as a one-off fee separately. But if you want to dip in and out of the course content, plus be able to leave questions for myself and my team at Pixelhaze, we're on there every day and we're able to answer your questions as and when we go. If you want more hands-on support, you can join our coaching community, which is $97 a month. And that will give you access to 2 live sessions with myself and my team every single week, and also a onboarding session where I will go through and put a personalized plan for you. This means if you are looking to learn Canva to take over the social media in an enterprise that you're working with or business that you're working with, likewise, if you're looking to get more from social media for your small business, again, I can help. I can create your own personalized pathway based on where you're starting and what you're looking to achieve. You can stay as a member on $97 a month for as long as you need it. If you're going through this workshop, then there's a good chance you're already a member of our free Academy membership, which is a mailing list plus, and in addition, it gives you access to all of these workshops that I'm providing for free. And by supporting us at Pixelhaze Academy, I can create more free content, and it should be a win-win. Hope you've enjoyed. I'm going to leave it there, and I hope to see you soon. Cheers.